Chris Maltbie is the Senior Director of Global Brand and Product at Tough Mudder and will be the race director for World's Toughest Mudder 2022. Chris Maltbie, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Will. Thanks for having me.
It's always a pleasure to talk with you. How have you been since we talked?
I've been great. Yeah, we've had a pretty killer 2022 season, sort of across the board. New markets coming online in China and Korea, sort of around the globe, but back here at home in the US has been pretty sweet as well. So first year of Infinity has been a lot of fun. It's been pretty cool to have a full sort of suite of endurance events going on, and yeah, I think people have been digging them. Looking forward to a great Worlds and a great 23 as well.
We haven't talked about it a lot, but Infinity, which is, you could call it daytime toughest if you wanted to ish, it fits a lot better with Toughest Mudder overnight and World's Toughest Mudder than the Tougher Mudder wave ever did. It makes more sense. Like I got Tough Mudder, Tougher Mudder made sense, but as far as a suite of endurance events, it makes more sense that way.
Yeah. As an adjective, it's not as good, but as a continuum of endurance events, it certainly works out pretty well, I think. You know, we wanted to do something that was sort of the same, loop-based, time-gated, with, you know, incremental achievements along the way. Worlds, as you know, it's one of the best experiences out there, especially in OCR. But for a lot of folks, like, it's hard to conceptualize what a 24-hour event's like. But to come out and see what it's like to just sort of rack up laps and see how far you can go when you're not quite sure yourself is such a good exposure to the product and to the brand, and to get sort of looped into this thing that we all love.
It all leads up to World's Toughest Mudder this November. Last year, the theme of the obstacles was kind of a mashup or maybe crossover theme. There's been some talk about crossover for this World's Toughest Mudder with the Spartan Ultra being canceled last week. What can you tell me about the Spartan Ultra? What's the situation for World's Toughest this year?
Yeah, so I think, as most of the community knows, for a variety of reasons, with wildfires out in California, Ultra World Champs had to unfortunately be canceled. And as a result, the participant base over there was offered transfer over to World's Toughest Mudder. Worlds isn't changing at all in light of that. The obstacles aren't changing, the penalties aren't changing, the competitive categories aren't changing. And I think there was maybe a little bit of a mix-up about that when the announcements were first coming out there. What we actually think it does is offer a pretty sweet opportunity. Those participants that were going to race at Ultra World Champs are going to come over. Most of them will end up being in the contender category, just based on sort of their race history and our qualification criteria. But they'll be coming over and racing with everybody else. There's some pretty big names from the sport too that are actually coming over now. Some of them sort of old World's Toughest top finishers that were not going to be able to make it to Worlds because of the proximity to the Ultra World Champs, and now they're coming over as well. So I actually think it's really good for the competition this year. I think we'll have a really competitive field, and I think we're going to see a lot of people who haven't had exposure to World's Toughest before that are really going to dig the community, the way we set things up, the way our obstacles function, sort of all the awesome things about the event that we love. We'll get to show to a few more people.
You know, Mark Batras was kind of unknown to the Tough Mudder community before, you know, showing up last year and winning the whole thing. Rhea Coble was unknown before she showed up, won the sprint lap, and then won the whole race. So that would be fun to see some of those guys come over. Some of the Spartan folks weren't super excited about it because I don't know if it's the penalties, or for whatever reason, it's clearly different than what the Spartan Ultra World Championships would be. What would you say to those guys who are like, hey, this isn't what I've been training for? Yeah, it's a 24-hour race, but it's a different kind of race. What those guys that are thinking about, I get a free one, but I don't know if I want to go. What do you say to those guys?
Yeah, I mean, I would have a few things to say. I think, one, we know from folks like Mark Batchers came over, first Tough Mudder event, went out and won the whole thing last year. Just talking to him and his family and some of the other folks who came out for the first time last year, they absolutely loved it. And I think they too probably had some mixed conceptions about what Tough Mudder really is, especially what World's Toughest is, until they got out there on the course and saw it's a serious competition. It really is designed to challenge you in a million different ways. Yes, it's essentially an ultra endurance event, but there's the environment to deal with. There's the obstacles. The obstacles change. The penalties range from mental challenges to physical challenges. So there's just a lot out there. I think most of us that have gotten into the ultra endurance space got into it because it was something really hard. We had to push ourselves, and it was satisfying because we overcame those things. It's sort of what's at the root of everything that Tough Mudder does. World's Toughest, I think, is great because it epitomizes that in one 24-hour period. So I think that's the first thing I would say. I think they'll be pleasantly surprised, and I think we've seen that historically when when some of the athletes from the Spartan side have come over. The other thing, and we talked about it, I think last time we spoke, was World's Toughest is now the 24-hour OCR World Championship event, and it was sort of selected for a reason. You know, we think it's the best in class. The governing body thinks it's the best in class, and so it's really a big step to get exposure across the board from folks that were already in that sort of, you know, extended ultra endurance space to come over and see what it's about. It's a great time. I think anyone that has concerns that it's overly gamified or it's not serious enough or it's all teamwork focused, I think they're going to find a lot to really enjoy about the event. The whole pit area is something really special. I think we all know that the vibe there is really awesome, but I can't remember a year at Worlds, whether I was running it or whether I was race directing or whatever I was doing there, that it didn't end up being a really incredible competition for the podium spots. You see people dig deeper than I've ever seen anywhere else. And for anyone that wants to go and take it, you know, it's there. If you think it's not serious enough, you can race for that podium. The prize purse is the same as Ultra World Champs was. So it's going to be a killer competition, plus a lot of fun and all the other things we love about it.
I don't know if it was Ryan Atkins or it was someone. So it was an elite level ultra OCR guy who said, well, if the race is too easy for you, then you're not running fast enough. So
I think that all the time. You know, you can run a 5K and it can be miserable. We have more time and more things to play with to make it miserable for you, but you can always run faster.
So to review for people who don't know, and actually there were some changes to loop distances and some of the other race or Tough Mudder races. Tell me about, are we still on 5 mile loops? What's the kind of overall, what can you tell me about World's Toughest 2022?
Yeah, so it's still 5 mile loops. I think if we ever change it from 5 mile loops, people would hunt me down personally, and it would be deserved in that case. It's a sacred distance, right? We have the bibs that have been the same since going way back 2012, 2011. So we're not changing from 5 mile loops at all. The times in the run of show are the same. Still sending folks off at noon. They still have until noon the next day to start their last lap, and then an extra hour and a half grace period to finish that lap. Obstacles opening up on a rolling basis. First lap is still that sprint lap. Nothing's open. So I have a sprint lap champion for anyone that really wants to come and blaze that first lap for that reward. Have bibs at 50 miles, 75 miles, 100 miles, and then we have the 125 mile bib that no one's ever won, but it's there for the taking if someone wants to push for it. And of course, the 100 mile orange blazer for anyone that enters the 100 mile club. So we have sort of all that going on. Penalties, you know, for someone who hasn't come out to run a Tough Mudder competitive event where we have penalties, we try to keep them really creative. They're not just long running loops. They're not just burpees. As tempted as we are to mess with people by throwing a few in, it's going to be those classic Tough Mudder creative yet miserable penalties. So some of them mental, some of them physical, a lot of them goofy, but all really designed to punish you for not having completed an obstacle. Like years past, we'll roll out that full list of penalties and obstacles in the week leading up to Worlds. So you can read up. We have the hot lap on Friday to get out on course, test stuff out, see what it's like, especially if you're crossing over, you're coming for the first time from a Spartan event to a Tough Mudder event. Get out there, monkey around on the stuff, see how it feels, plan your race around it. You mentioned earlier that the theme last year was these sort of combined crossover obstacles was the theme. This year we're going with heavy modification to existing obstacles, a lot of brand new stuff we've never done before. One of or the biggest feature we've had to date. So a lot of cool stuff out there, a lot of stuff to challenge folks, and yeah, it'll be a great time, I think.
You say one of the biggest features, so like physically large obstacle, biggest we've had, one of?
I will say I think it is the furthest that somebody will go from height to ground that we've ever had,
including the cliff.
Yeah, depending on the water levels at any given year at Lake Las Vegas, I think it's the highest.
So furthest vertical distance traveled on a WTM obstacle. Look forward to that.
Now I want to measure it, but yeah, I'm quite confident. It's going to freak people out.
40 plus feet ish. That's what the cliff was, right? 40 feet.
Cliff was 30.
30?
30, 35. But yeah, it's going to be up there. It's going to be a good one.
You mentioned the 24-hour World Championship tie-in. What does that mean for runners?
Yeah, I think it means a couple things. I mean, first, it's pretty cool for all of us that have been around this event for so long, right? It's on a global scale, recognizing it as the 24-hour event in this space. It does unlock a few things. The biggest of which is the ability to set world records. So automatically, if this had come along last year, Mark Batchus would be the world record holder for a 24-hour OCR event. It's the furthest anyone ever ran at Worlds, therefore that is the benchmark. So that's a pretty cool thing we're excited to talk about. We hope we see some record-breaking performances this year, but it also just gives us a great way to get athletes from around the world coming out to do this event, where maybe, in the past, it's always been a world-class event. Most of our participants coming from the UK and where we have a lot of Tough Mudder events. This is a great pipeline to get really top tier athletes into the whole Tough Mudder ecosystem and show them what our community and our courses and our whole event format's like.
I saw some talk online about the finisher swag for this year. What can you tell me about headbands, and what do you get when you finish 24 hours at World's Toughest Mudder?
Why don't I take you through it from the beginning so I can be super clear?
Sure.
So we're happy, by popular demand, bringing back finisher t-shirts this year. So those you get for registering for the event. You sign up and you're entitled to that shirt. Really cool. We haven't released the design yet, but I'm really happy with the way it turned out. Exclusive for Gulf Coast 2022 World's Toughest Mudder. There's also, of course, the race bib that you get for the category you're in, whether that's open, contender, or elite contender. Throughout the course of the race, you have the ability to earn the achievement awards at the mileage thresholds that we talked about earlier. And then if you're an official finisher, so that means you have to start at the beginning of the race and you need to finish your last lap, however many laps that is, after 8 a.m. on the Sunday morning. Theoretically, you could wander out on course at noon on Saturday and not find your way back in until 8 a.m. the next day. If that's the way you run your race, that's fine. You can be an official finisher. World's Toughest is really about going the distance time-wise, sticking it out through the night, being out there. So those are the rules. If you're an official finisher, that's when you get your medal and you get your exclusive World's Toughest headband. So those are the big finisher items there. And then at the brunch on Monday, which is going to be down in Pensacola, we will be releasing the exact venue and address for that shortly. Down there is where we do all of the age group awards, where we do the podium, where we do the winners' medals, all that sort of stuff like we've done in years past.
And then just to be super clear, what color is that headband after 24 hours?
Thank you, Will. That headband is black with orange trim on it.
So very similar to last year, if not the same.
Yes, very similar.
Mileage bibs. Did you mention mileage bibs? So when someone finishes 50 miles, say they finish their 50th mile at 12:30 in the morning, are they eating those bibs during the race, or is that going to be toward the end of the race like last year?
So this is the way it works. It's going to be different depending if you're in the open or the contender category. The reason being, when you're out on the course there's some challenges that only open participants are allowed to do, like the Golden Carabiner challenges we do on course. We need to be able to identify who's in contention for podium spots and who's out there in the open category. So if you are a contender or an elite contender, you'll receive those mileage bibs during the race. So when you cross the 50-mile threshold, you can come to the race center, pick them up, switch over your timing chip, and run with that bib. One of the things we recognized we were missing out on last year was those bragging rights, that ability to quickly identify who was already climbing up in the rankings during the race. I know it was always one of my favorite things. There's a real sense of achievement in getting a 50 or 75 mile bib and still being out there running laps. It's sort of a universal language and currency on course. If you're in the open category, we'll distribute those at the end of the race. So when you clock out, turning your chip, at the end, you'll get that reward. So we want to reward everybody for the mileage that they've done, but there are some real-time race considerations for who can pick them up when.
You and I have talked offline about the live stream plans for World's Toughest 2022. Would you like to talk about that now or announce anything?
Yeah, why not? So we're very happy to announce to the public that our very own Will Hicks here will be running our 24-hour live content throughout the race, including on-course footage, hourly check-ins, sort of tracking everything from what's going on with the obstacles to front runners in the race. And for those of you who can't make it out this year, making you feel a little bit like you're there in Atmore, Alabama with us. I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that, Will.
I just want to say I am so excited about this year at World's Toughest. I love running it. Running World's Toughest is my favorite thing I do every year. But I'm going to enjoy talking about it for 24 hours and being out there. And I was talking with somebody about it. World's Toughest Mudder has the vibe of the race evolves over the race. Like from 12 noon to 8 p.m. It's fun. Everyone's having a good time. It's like a party. And it gets kind of like overnight, dark, middle of the night. It's kind of maybe you're all alone out there and it's kind of maybe a little scary. Like, am I going to see anybody else? And then the last, 6 hours, 8 hours of it is just about surviving. Like, can I get one more lap? Do I have enough time to make one more lap? And so we've talked about like we want our coverage to kind of reflect the race. Like the first part of it will be fun. And then the middle part's going to be kind of serious. And the second part's going to be like, hey, celebrating these wins from, 8 a.m. to noon to 1:30 really. So yeah, OCR Report is very excited about World Toughest this year.
Yeah, I think it's going to be great. And I think you're absolutely right. There is nothing more elemental than the relief of the sun coming up at World's Toughest Mudder and knowing that you're almost there wherever you're at in your race. So yeah, I think it's going to be awesome. We're happy to bring it live to everybody at home the whole time. I think it'll be really, a killer experience. We're looking forward to it.
It's a little early to talk about, but I saw the 2023 schedule for the regular Tough Mudder events has already gone out with some kind of basic information, weekends and what cities you're going to be in. Anything you want to talk about 2023?
No, we've got a killer schedule coming out. Most of those events are live now. We will be releasing soon the Infinity and Toughest events for next year. And then, of course, as we've done in years past, at the brunch on Monday after World's Toughest, we'll be announcing the venue for next year. So you can count on that similar weekend in November, the way we always do it, but we'll announce the venue on that Monday. So something to look forward to, but you can get ahead of it now. Buy your season passes, Season Pass Plus, Holy Grail Pass, all that good stuff with the calendar that's out there right now. Of course, I'll mention the Unbreakable Pass, which gets you access to everything, including World's Toughest, all the Spartan events. Really excited this next week, actually, the first Highlander event, which is in the broader Spartan portfolio right now. Really cool event format, doing their first event ever in Big Bear Lake out in California. So we're checking that out. Those Unbreakable Passes get you access to anything. So if you've been curious, want to try out some of the other stuff in the portfolio, it's a pretty cool thing. Yeah. I
don't get paid for selling Unbreakable Passes, but if you're buying a Tough Mudder season pass and you're buying a Spartan season pass, you might as well buy an Unbreakable one. For like, admit it's way cheaper over 3 years to do that way. Hey, anything else? Okay.
No, I think that's mostly it. A couple deadlines coming up for anyone watching that maybe isn't registered for World's Toughest yet. I'd buy up those tickets as soon as you can. There's a few things in early October. So if you haven't already qualified as a contender for World's Toughest and you need to submit an application for an exemption or from a different race result that you want to apply for contender status, those need to be in by October 1st. So you need to be registered for the event by then. We also have the limited edition t-shirts with every participant's name on the back. If you want your name on that shirt, you need to be registered by October 1st. And then we'll be sending out comms about pit reservation. So reserving your pit spaces in middle of October. We want to make sure everyone's registered, getting all those comms so you don't miss out on anything. If you're registering late, you want to grab a sweet pit spot down there. So register sooner rather than later. Get those brunch tickets. Get the pit crew tickets, sooner. And yeah, we should have a great time down there. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, this is your first World's Toughest Mudder. Getting a good pit spot and getting brunch tickets. Brunch sells out every year. So get on both of those as quick as you can. You can sign up for World's Toughest Mudder and any Tough Mudder at toughmudder.com. Chris Maltbie, thanks much.
Yeah, thanks, Will.